Welcome to Let's Talk Ed. Quick intro. Welcome to Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. Megan, how are you doing?
I am doing great today.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy you're feeling better. I miss you.
Yes, I was sick last week.
Yeah, it seems like forever, even though it's just, we're still on track though for recording, but it just seemed like forever, and we just haven't seen you in just a week, so.
It's been like a week and a half. So
a week and a half, okay.
It feels a little bit longer.
Yeah. So I'm happy you're back. I'm happy you're doing great.
Thank you.
Let's try this again.
Okay.
Welcome to Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris, the best college podcast where we explore the big questions about education, careers, and the future, but most importantly, the show that is empowering minds.
One episode at a time.
There we go. We got it. I'm your host, Professor Chris, and my co-host, again, behind the camera, Megan.
Woohoo!
Yes. Megan, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about something not so fun. We're talking about drugs and substance abuse.
We are talking about drugs. Our title for today is Convos, Understanding College Drug Use. By the way, I've already done this podcast kind of differently, but I'm trying to kind of bring it back again for obvious specific reasons. Why are we talking about drugs? What in it?
We're talking about college kids. I feel like that's something that needs to be addressed because it's a season of life where I think that's something they're going to have to deal with. So I think it's important to talk about.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that I'm very optimistic, but I also know that's one of those things that will never go away.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So actually, this got my attention. That something I found in the news, which Megan is going to read for us. So kick us off.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
As fall semester begins, college students are being warned about new deadly drugs. This is from Tallahassee, Florida. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody is warning college students about new deadly drugs that are flooding the black market. Moody's office says fentanyl is now the #1 killer of adults between the ages of 18 and 45. Here's what the Office of the Attorney General had to say about the deadly drugs. While this synthetic opioid is often covertly mixed with other substances, it's now being discovered in bright rainbow colors, which is raising concerns that it may become more enticing to these younger users. And Eudalone, I don't know if I'm saying that properly. I think it's Eudalone.
Eudalone, yeah.
Eudalone, it's a lesser known drug defined as a psychoactive bath salt.
We don't do drugs, so we don't know the names of these drugs.
I was about to clarify. That's why I don't know what this is, because I don't do this. Is also claiming an alarming number of lives in Florida. And the National Institute of Justice reports that Florida accounts for more than 60% of the positive cases of Eudalone in the United States.
Wow.
And it's cheap to produce, and it mimics the effects of cocaine, methamphetamine, and ecstasy. And like fentanyl, it's often being mixed with other illicit drugs and sold to unsuspecting users with deadly consequences. And General Ashley Moody said, as millions of teens and young adults begin another academic year, I want to make sure these students understand the dangers of using illicit drugs. More common drugs like cocaine, meth, and ecstasy are being mixed with other dangerous substances and sold to unsuspecting users. So never take an illicit substance, and remember that just one pill can kill. And Eudalone can be found in powder, capsule, tablet form, and it could be ingested, smoked, snorted, and injected, all the things. So that's a lot to
Thank you,
in.
Megan. Yes, that is a lot to take in. So why are we talking about this today? Of course, we're doing our best. We, as in a big we, doing our best to fight drugs. We can't control it. You read something about rainbow colors, so then it attracts a little more. So the more we're fighting, the more people are also making it more enticing to the students. Thanks, Megan, for reading that.
Of course.
So why do we want to discuss drug use on college campuses? Well, first of all, like Megan already told you all, it's something that unfortunately doesn't do anyone any good. One, as the school year starts, there's going to be peer pressure, which we're going to be talking about. So especially the freshmen, I think this is also a good time to have these conversations. We're going to look at the pros, no pros about drugs. It's all cons, right? That's not talk about pros and cons of drugs. No,
cons.
Cons, right? Yeah. So usually when we're doing this topic, nobody really believes us until we do the numbers.
Yep.
So let's do some numbers. Some of the statistics that I'm going to share with you today. The very first one, 31%, approximately 31% of U.S. students report symptoms of alcohol abuse. We're going to talk all about drinking today. 80%, approximately 80% of U.S. college students have abused alcohol. 450%. So I used to think percentages just go to 100.
Right. Me too.
450%. That's how bad it is. Between 1993 to 2005, the proportion of students who have abused tranquilizers like Xanax, Valium, I think I've heard about those two, increased by 450%.
That is crazy.
The last one that gets me is 110,000. An estimated 110,000 students between the ages of 18 and 24 are arrested every year for an alcohol-related violation such as public drunkenness or driving under the influence. Not that any form of drinking is better than the other, but DUI is the most dangerous thing. So again, if maybe we have to spend this whole time just talking about that, we will, but there's other things we need to talk about. So those are the numbers. Talking about DUI, this is from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, NIAA stats, estimated 1,500 students, again, between 18 and 24 died due to unintentional alcohol-related injuries, which include car accidents. That's a big number.
Ooh, I actually have a story about that I was not going to share.
Me too.
But that just brought up a thought.
Me too. Okay. The same data explains that an estimated 97,000 students ages between 18 and 24 are victims of alcohol-related sexual assault or date rape. And I have on my thing here that I do have a story as well. I'm going to try and make this very quick. Case in point, back in Florida, I'm not going to state which school in Florida. And by the way, we read this story from Tallahassee, Florida, so I don't want anybody thinking, oh, Florida is a mess. This is all over the United States in every college you could think of, okay? My quick story on date rape, even though this was at night, I guess it's still classified as a date rape. Students went out.
It's not funny. It's not funny.
Funny, I know. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Students went out at night with friends. My student, unfortunately, did not have a girlfriend. I don't know. Maybe he had a girlfriend, but his girlfriend didn't go.
Okay.
So it was two couples. He was the third wheel, I guess.
Yep.
So in the car that would fit 5, he's in the back seat with his girlfriend, his friend's girlfriend in the back. They got back to the college, and guess what the girl said? Everybody was drunk, by the way. Thankfully, they all got back safely. But I think the next morning, the girl felt like she was groped. She was raped.
Oh.
And guess what? It happened to be my student in the back seat with her.
Uh-oh.
I didn't know all about this here, except I got a notice as an instructor that this student would no longer be attending your class. So when I inquired, I was shown the school newspaper, which also ended up in the local newspapers anyways, that this is what happened. Great student, great kid. So again, I'm trying to make this very quick and short, but this is one of the reasons, right, that I don't want anybody to fall into the same thing.
Right.
Okay, so usually when we talk about drug use, something I didn't also know, by the way, that I had to do research, the first episode actually that I did with Dr. Norman Collins, whom you know. I did interview Dr. Norman Collins, and he broke it down. It's like there's a difference between drug use and substance abuse. So very quickly, I'm going to go through this here, then we can move on. So there's key differences between drug use and substance abuse. Drug use, when under the frequency and intensity, drug use seems to be occasional, right? So you can use drug occasionally. If you're abusing drugs, then you're doing it more often, right? So you're really abusing it. So that's the difference when it comes to the frequency and intensity. Consequences, of course, drug use, again, I'm not condoning either one of this here, excuse me, but drug use might lead to serious consequences, but not probably as dangerous as substance abuse, which results in significant academic, legal, you name it, all the health issues that can happen. Intent drug use, again, you're like, okay, I'm hanging out with my friends, I could just use a little bit of drugs here and there. But intent for substance abuse, you really intend to abuse that drug.
Right.
So you fall into that. And of course, the social perception. Drug use, again, when it comes to social perception, is often, the college culture, everybody's doing it. You go to the party, everybody's drinking, you want to do that. However, the social perception beyond everything else is substance abuse, where now, you've just got it, right? You are going to do it no matter what. And believe it or not, sometimes it's also from your family.
Yeah.
Family members, okay. All right, so very quickly again, I'm trying to get through this here. Hopefully this helps with the difference between drug use and substance abuse. Enough of me talking, and we'll get something from Megan too. All right. So what we're gonna be talking about now is a landscape. I kind of already alluded to where it happens, and I don't think there's any place where it doesn't happen. So Megan, actually I think this is a question that I'm gonna see if you could get.
Okay. Well,
first of all, during your college days, way back. I'm thinking
2013 to 2017.
Way back, yes. What substance do you think students were using?
I don't even just think, I know, because I went to a smaller college. So it was one of those things where, like, you were seeing, you were hearing, you knew what was being done.
Right.
And so I would say, I was going to ask, but you already answered my question. Like, are we counting alcohol in this? Because if that's the case, I would say that's the number one. But then the other two that I saw being most common were also marijuana. And then surprisingly, the other one was Adderall. People...
Really?
Often someone would have a prescription for it, but would sell it to other people, and they would use it so they could stay up all night to study for a test.
Okay.
Or like they would abuse it for that purpose of like just being able to pass a class. I saw that happen a lot.
Okay. So you probably already given me the answer to the second question I was going to ask you is, what do you think is the number one substance that is abused in college?
I kind of am going back and forth whether I feel like it's either alcohol or marijuana. It's alcohol?
Alcohol.
That makes sense.
Yes. So I'm trying to do this very quick so far as the landscape goes. If students haven't heard me say this many, many times, I've been blessed to have opportunities for different institutions. Large university, small university, two little small universities. And the reason I kind of want to touch on this here is because I have seen it on all faces. I started with a very small Christian, may I add, school, which was not out of bounds, okay? It was happening there. The difference was in my little small Christian college, if you were caught doing it, you were kicked out.
Yes.
Because it was not allowed. Interesting enough, I left there and went to the big college, and to my surprise, actually it was during one of my lectures, I was a graduate student then at that point. The professor said, let's take a quick break. So we had like 10, 15 minutes. This is me coming from a small college, okay, to a very big college. We walked out, and the very first thing one of my classmates did was pull out a pack of cigarettes.
Oh, man.
I was terrified because I was thinking he could get kicked out.
Oh, no.
Come to find out, that was okay to do that, okay? All right, so again, case in point is I bet anyone who could tell me this doesn't happen at their institution. I'm not a gambling man, but I'll bet $100 that it's either under wraps, you just don't know it, but it is happening.
100%.
Thank you.
My college was small, also Christian based, and it was
Yes,
happening.
it was happening.
It was happening
Okay.
across the board.
All right, so Megan, you already got the question to the very first one. What is the drug or substance that's been abused the most? You got it. It is alcohol.
Oh,
60 to 70%, and you are right on point. Second one is marijuana.
I got the top two.
Top two, 30 to 40%. And we got prescription stimulants, 10 to 20. I saw cocaine on here. And again, maybe this is me being very naive, but isn't that expensive?
It is expensive. I was going to say that as one of the things I saw happening, not as commonly, but it was because it's not so readily available. Like most college students don't have a ton of money.
That's, yeah.
Unless you do, you're not buying cocaine. But I
people,
saw it.
People,
I saw it.
Really?
Oh yeah. I saw it, just not as often.
All right. I guess sometimes I underestimate the financial capacity of some of our students. Cocaine is 2 to 5%. Ecstasy is 5 to 10%. What's that one?
Hallucinogens?
Yes. What is that?
You know, I don't. I've heard that term, but
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know what that includes or
Okay.
what that means.
That's 5 to 10%. And nicotine, tobacco, that I'm sure we all are aware of, is 10 to 15%. Those are your numbers. Okay. So Megan, why do college students, let's not even abuse, why do college students just use drugs?
Just use it in
Yes.
general.
Yeah.
I think some people are doing it, or a lot of people are doing it because of peer pressure. And I mean, you see everybody else doing it, you want to fit into that group. And I think that can be worse depending on certain groups or organizations that you're involved in. I mean, I was part of Greek life, which I loved. I could talk for an entire episode of like the pros of being in a fraternity or sorority. But I also recognize that those groups are sometimes the ones that are throwing the parties, they're leading those activities. So I think, being around certain people you can fall into peer pressure more easily.
Right.
But then on like the flip side, I also think that some of it could be just the pressure that a student is under.
Right.
College is already really challenging, but some of the students have these added burdens that they have and that they're carrying. Yeah. And so, using drugs is in a way to like escape from that.
Right.
It's not healthy, but like I've seen it and I know that's happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Megan is behind the camera and she's doing a great job. I think next episode we're going to switch roles. She's going to be right here. I'll be behind the camera. Yeah. Because Megan is right on point, and I'm not gonna just repeat everything you said. But yeah, number one reason for students either abusing or using drugs is academic pressure. They use it as a coping mechanism. I'm told, I have never, by the way, I don't do drugs. I don't even do prescription drugs, let alone any drugs, right? But I've been told that marijuana apparently could get you to stay up. It takes you on a different level of intellectuality. You become very smart.
That is interesting.
I haven't seen any research that really proves that, because sadly, I had a friend way back in high school who was smoking marijuana and went crazy. Again, I know we are legalizing marijuana and there are people who make cases for marijuana. That's not what we're trying to do here. I know the marijuana industry right now is $1 billion industry. All I'm saying is, for my poor students, don't indulge, because I have seen the cons of marijuana. Okay.
And I've actually heard like the opposite. Like I've heard like it makes you want to just, take a nap or like just go get
Really?
Yeah, like I've never heard it. I've never heard those
Have
things
you had
about it.
Have you had it makes you hungry?
Yes, I've heard that, and I've heard that makes you just want to just like literally sit on the couch. I've never heard someone say like, that makes me have all this energy, I'm gonna go do all this stuff. So that's a flip side of it, because I don't know if it's different for every person, but.
Okay. You heard it from Megan.
Don't try to find out.
Yes, yes. And then we got social, which you've mentioned. Unfortunately, family history can also be part of that. It happens at home. I've always said, parents. This podcast is really not just for students. By the way, there are a lot of parents who watch our podcast and also encourage students to watch, which I think is great. But as parents, I've always said, if you're a parent and you're smoking, I don't care what smoke it is, how do you tell your child not to do it?
Right. It would come across, I think, as hypocritical if
Yes.
you're doing something.
Right.
That's for anything. If you're
Yes.
doing it and you're telling your kid not to do it.
Okay. So unfortunately, yes, there could be some family history, so you indulge. Beliefs about substance use. We just talked about some of those beliefs. It makes you this. Does it really? I haven't seen any research on it. I gave you some. Megan, you said actually you think it's the opposite. I believe that. And of course, poor academic performance. Somehow students feel like if they're not doing well in school, then the solution will be to indulge.
Oh, it's not a good idea. I feel like I can see like maybe why they would think
Yeah.
that, but I've seen that play out so many times where it's the exact opposite.
Okay. You mentioned something that you think the students were using because they feel like they can stay up.
Adderall. Yes.
Okay, so back in my day, way back in my day, it was Red Bull.
Oh, yes.
Which is funny because I've also known people who like, no, Red Bull just makes me sleep or tired.
Makes my heart like flutter. Any type of like energy drink like that makes my heart just flutter.
It used to be coffee, but that didn't even really work. So anyway, why? We are given, maybe there's some other reasons, but these are some of the reasons that I think, people use. Okay, so now let's get serious a little bit here. Megan, help us. How do you think drug use or substance abuse affects students?
I mean, I think it affects your energy. It affects your motivation to get up and tackle the day, despite what some people think when they're first taking something. I've seen that. It fully affects the way that you handle everything.
Yeah.
And I think it can affect your mental health. I mean, especially if that's something you're already struggling with, I think adding that's not going to help. And then I think ultimately it can also really start to affect your relationships, your grades, stuff like that. It can just become very addictive, and that will ultimately seep out to every part of your life at some point.
Okay. Well, did Megan touch on everything that I'm about to say? Yes, she did.
Did I?
Yes, she did. Number one on my list is mental health, if nothing else. So we have so much mental health discussions. There's a lot of things that can affect you mentally. Why add drugs? That's all I'm gonna say, okay? Academic performance. I haven't seen anyone. I actually have an alcohol story that I need to share real quick. First of all, when I was in Florida, sadly, there were 2 incidents where students were drunk, got in a car accident, didn't make it before the semester even started.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Fact. My other alcohol story that I'm going to share very quickly is one of my students who I had no idea was drunk, came to my class for an exams, and I was just walking around, just checking, and he had this calculator that he wasn't allowed to use during. It's a programmable calculator that he wasn't allowed to use on the exam. So I went to him to say, sorry, you can't use this here. Can I have it? And he blew up.
Oh, wow.
He was cursing me out, which unfortunately, by the way, students, you curse out your professor, you are done. Okay?
Especially I'm going to talk about exam day. That's I'm going
to talk about that maybe in another episode. But anyway, the student was off. He went off. Students were worried, thinking, is he insane? Because he just really literally crossed the line. He went on and on, come to find out he was drunk. it got worse because as I asked him to, go out and the students, telling me, hey, you can't talk to Professor Chris this way, he wouldn't hear it. He threatened them, talked about, again, this is nothing against vets, but he was a vet. I just came back from Iraq. So he just went on to tell the students what guns he has at home, and if they're not quiet, he's going to come back. He's saying this, and Virginia Tech incident just happened not too long ago.
Oh my God.
Right? So yeah, again, we'll talk about this topic another time. But he was under the influence of he was drunk, 10 o'clock in the morning, okay? And even though this doesn't happen quite often, this is what it can lead to, okay? Social relationships, it could destroy that. I don't think nice, beautiful ladies love a guy that drinks, and it's vice versa too, right? It could go the other way. I don't think guys. So again, it can destroy your relationships. Megan already mentioned that, and not to mention the legal consequences. So when it comes to legal, what students need to know is two ways. First of all, in schools that don't allow it, as I mentioned, you're suspended, you're kicked out, you're not coming back.
Right.
Wow, I'm getting all these different stories. I had a student who was was caught with marijuana, over I don't know how many pounds of marijuana in his car. He was telling me this story because he missed my exams, and I was like, no, he's making this up. And he pulled a police report. He spent a night in the jail, so he missed my exam the next day. So I'm like, oh boy, just when I thought I've had it all.
That's the first for you, why they've missed
Yes.
it.
So again, those are the legal consequences. And on that, if you're in trouble with the law, the school has nothing to do with it. Just FYI, the school is not going to bail you out. You are on your own. Even though after you deal with that, now the school is also going to take its measures. So please, just don't do it. We talked about how it impacts students. All right. So last episode, Megan, if you remember, we what was the topic? We did
Cheating.
Thank you. We did cheating, and I said maybe it's not all on the students.
Right.
I'm gonna do something similar to this here. Again, not making any excuses for any of our students, because like they always tell me, they are 18, they are 20, so they can make good decisions. They're grown, yes. So I'm like, okay. In that case, then I'm not giving you any break. You're matured, you should know what to do. So you should know what to do and what not to do. But one of the things that gets me is some of the schools that actually sell alcohol. Like they have restaurants on campus.
Right.
I dealt with this for a long time when I was back in Florida. Again, I'm not going to mention the institution, but we had 3 different restaurants that you can easily go there and have a beer or 2 or whatever you wanted. And I've said, this doesn't make sense to me, because if we're telling students not to drink, if students are getting in trouble during tailgating for football games, and oh, by the way, we do have the police that are undercover that walk around and randomly could say, can I see an ID?
That happened to 2 people I can think of off the bat at my school. They got drinking tickets in the parking lot at a tailgate because the police were doing that, and they were underage.
You see, I didn't even know you could get a drinking ticket.
We didn't either until I witnessed that happen firsthand.
My student, Matt, that I love dearly, so I'm not using his last name, Monday morning, my top A student, I'm in classroom, he comes in with this note, oh, Professor Chris, could you please sign off on this for me? I'm underage, something to that effect. I was tailgating, one of my friends gave me a drink, and I'm in trouble. I'm like, what? Matt, why?
What did you have to sign? To like defend his character? Or like what was it for?
To say that this is his first time, he's a good student, so that maybe he could get off with a warning. But it was a drinking ticket. I didn't know about that. Anyway, we could spend 3 hours talking about this topic.
We could. Because I was just going to ask too.
Yeah.
Don't some like larger schools, like at the football games, like don't they sell like beer and stuff like that at the football games? Am I
Yes.
making that up? I mean, my school didn't because it was a smaller school, but I feel like I've heard that happens at these larger
Yes.
schools.
My college didn't because we didn't have a big football program, but when I
Right.
was in Florida, the big school, yes. And as I mentioned, they are restaurants. So the reason I'm bringing this up again is, yes, students, dear students, I don't blame all this on you if the administration or the people that control the campuses are actually condoning, right? Because they sell alcohol in some of those restaurants. In the school that I was talking about, there were at least 4 different restaurants that they sold alcohol, right? So you can't be telling students not to do it. So students, I give you a little pass on that, because when I was in grad school, every time we had an exam and it didn't go too well, the first thing students would say was like, let's go drink it off.
Need a drink.
I did,
yeah.
yes, I need a drink. Again, fortunately, I didn't drink, so it didn't help me. Another quick story that I had was there was a restaurant off campus that sold wings. And it was a Fridays, they would sell like 20 wings for $1. But did you know what a catch was?
You had to buy a drink. Yeah.
So they sold buckets of beer, right? So I would go in there with my friends and then we'll have wings. I'm talking about 100 wings.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, so much wings. And then they'll bring us buckets of beer. Again, I didn't drink, so I just ordered Sprite. At the end of the night, we'll get a bill for probably about $200. You know how much of that $200 is the wings?
Not much of it, I would imagine. Especially if they were doing some
About
sort of special.
$15.
Yeah.
$15 out of the 200. So where did the other one?
I don't do math, but that's a lot.
Yes, all that was from the beer. So as 8 guys were sitting around trying to figure out what to chip in.
I was just gonna say, I hope you guys didn't split that evenly because that would be very
No
unfortunate
way.
for you.
No way. I put $10 on the table and I walked away.
As you should have. That
Yes.
was okay.
So I'll finish the story here. We'll take a little quick break and then we'll get right back to it. But one of the things I actually want to talk about for students, and we already talked about, I don't know how students, how they find money. We talk about cocaine. That's one of my things because, again, with my friends, they spend a lot of money on drinks.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back to this very interesting topic.
It is.
Hello, I am Professor Chris, the founder and host of Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. College can be one of the most enjoyable and memorable times in your life. After almost 3 decades of different college experiences, I have done, seen, or heard just about everything there is to experience in college life. I draw these experiences from the whole spectrum of educational institutions. These experiences are drawn from my years as a student and many other years as an instructor, a professor, director, a department head, and a dean. But most importantly, the relationship I have built over the years with current and former students as an advisor and mentor, collecting a wealth of knowledge and understanding about college life.
My name is Natalie. I've known Professor Chris for over 10 years. He's definitely given me a lot of great advice.
I ended up completing my engineering degree and went on to pursue a master's. Professor Chris was one of the first people I knew I could count on to help me with that, and he wrote me a letter of recommendation.
Professor Chris has served as a mentor, guiding me through my educational experience. I really think that I am where I am as a professional engineer, partly because of him. I could not say enough good things about Professor Chris.
One thing that has always stuck with me was how he translated every textbook problem to a real-life problem. Professor Chris, you are a true asset to the academic community, and I wish you to keep up with the excellent job you're providing.
Whether you are a student, a staff member, an instructor, or an administrator at a college, you can visit my website at Let's Talk Ed to request a speaking engagement for a small or large group of students where I provide strategies for the most enjoyable and memorable times in your college, and how to navigate college successfully. I am looking forward to connecting with you all in person soon. All right, welcome back to Let's Talk Ed. This is a very good topic. Megan and I were just, even we're taking a break, we're still talking about this topic. So it's a great topic. We could spend lots of, probably an hour just talking about this here, but we're gonna get through it very quickly. But while we're on break, I'm gonna have Megan share the story. When I talk about this topic, it always takes me back to things that I've seen my students go through, none of them good, right?
Right.
Alcohol abuse, marijuana, what have you. And Megan just very quickly just mentioned an incident that happened. So I'm gonna have Megan share her story about some of the effects of alcohol abuse. Alcohol, substance abuse, drug abuse. Megan.
So this was a story that honestly, like when I was preparing for this, I didn't really think about, but as we're sitting here talking, I'm just reminded of that entire situation. But during my junior year of college, one of my closer friends, she was in my sorority, but it was her freshman year, so she was 2 years younger than me. And it was the very start of spring semester. So she'd been there for one semester exactly. And it had been snowing. She had went to a party and was drunk, but decided to get in her car. Didn't call anybody. She just decided to get in her car, and no one knows where she was driving to. But the next day, none of us could find her. No one had talked to her. And then come to find out, she had run her car into a tree because she was drunk. And so she died. And that was a hard situation for everybody that knew her. And I already before that, I didn't drink. And if I did, I was not getting behind a wheel. Like I was strict about that. But after that situation, like I would never even like consider the thought of it. And I pressured my brother to make sure, like, I don't care how far away I am, you call me, like never do this. And so a situation like that, I think, can be very eye-opening to really seeing the consequences of like it, not just one drink at a party, like she lost her life, somebody lost their daughter, like it was very traumatizing and something that still is very hard to talk about.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. Megan, how can we help our students? Any ideas you have? What support systems do you know that are available for students in substance abuse situations?
So I'm sure there's more than what's initially coming to mind for me, but every institution should have some sort of counseling that's available to students. So even if that's not a long-term solution, if you get connected with those counselors, they can get you connected with a long-term solution. And that's a resource that students, they can take advantage of that for a large number of issues that they might have, but that can also include substance abuse.
Okay. Once again, yes, there are campus resources. There's everywhere. Counseling is the number one. Students need to remember that when the counselors, and I've always said this here, I've seen institutions with more than 150 counselors just so they can meet the demand of whatever issues students are going through. Yes, I get the students usually complain about, well, the counselors, I can't connect with them. But trust me, that is a good start. Even if you go to a counselor and you say, you know what, I have this issue, but I can't trust you, they will help you out. They will find somebody that you could trust, and it could be an instructor. Trust me, most of my students have always come to me first. I've helped them, put them in the right places to go to, because sometimes some of the stuff my students tell me, I really don't have any answers to, but to get professional help, right? So, yes, definitely campuses have a lot of resources. I'm trying to go through this very quickly. National resource, there are hotlines, by the way. If you have issues and you don't think the counselors a good place to start with. You don't trust your instructors, you don't trust your own friends, just go and Google. There are hotlines and organizations that you could call up, you could find it on the internet that will help you out, and everything will be very confidential. Seek help. If you really think your friends at college are your friends, they should be telling you what you're doing is not right, and you should be able to tell them vice versa. So don't fall under peer pressure. Okay. Prevention and education. What are our colleges doing? Our colleges are doing a lot. I must admit, there's constant discussions about don't do drugs, it helps with your mental health. Every mental health discussion that I've been involved in, if it has to do with students, it talks about drugs and substance abuse. Okay, so I think the schools are doing their part. The part that I don't think they're doing is what I talked about, which is get alcohol off the campus.
Right.
Okay, so hopefully somebody from some of the institutions are listening to this here. There is a CRP, Collegiate Recovery Committees. Google that. You know, there's all different programs that now they're trying to make sure that institutions have it. Again, education, schools are talking about that, and they are creating supportive environments also to kind of help students get out of that. All right. Megan, were you peer pressured in college back in your day?
Back in the day?
Back in your day, yeah.
I was going to say sometimes,
okay,
but the more I sit here and think about it, it's not even just sometimes. I definitely was. Okay. And I mentioned this earlier, but some of the organizations that I was a part of were partaking in a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. Yeah. And especially being in a smaller college, like you just knew everyone and it seemed like everybody was doing this. So it was very easy to get wrapped up into that. So I understand that aspect of that peer pressure because I've lived that firsthand.
Okay. So this is kind of how I approach peer pressure, because most of the students that I talk to feel like it's easier for me to say because I'm not the one that is trying to fit in. Mm-hmm. And I've always said, look at it this way. Do any of your friends, do any of your students, so-called students, do any of those people pay your bills?
That's that type of advice like you don't want to listen to when you're younger, but as you get older, you look back and you're like, they were so right.
Yes. So again, to my students, the way I approach peer pressure is, once again, if you're telling me you're 18, you're 20, you're 24, you're matured, you can make your own decisions, you should be able to stand up to your friends and say, you know what, I'm drunk. You know what, you are drunk, you're not driving.
Right.
You know what, you should not smoke. This is not going to help you. I believe if you're 18, 20, 24, and once again, you tell Professor Chris or you tell Miss Megan that you're matured and you know what to do, nobody should tell you what to do, especially when they're not paying your bills.
Facts.
Okay, I think I already told my story about my friends and the wings, which I was going to talk about here, so let's get right to it. 17 million, as we're getting close to wrapping this up, talking about personal responsibilities and peer pressure. 17 million college students drink alcohol. That's 2 times the population of New York City. That's a lot.
Insane.
Yes, 17 million. I believe the last time I checked, overall student population in the United States is about 25 million.
And 17 of them.
17 of them. So when we started, the percentage of 60 to 70%, I think in that ballpark is what we're looking at, 17 million, okay?
Wow.
And once again, most of this here could also be due to peer pressure. On the average, maybe I should talk to the next president, whoever it is, to say we should cancel financial aid, because apparently our students have money.
They're getting money somewhere.
Somewhere. On an average, students spend $500 per year on booze, alcohol. A more recent study shows that the average student now spends almost $900 per year on booze and only $450 on books.
Oh my gosh.
The average college student is drunk for 10.6 hours each week. Facts.
That's a lot.
Yes. Okay. Megan, we're getting ready to wrap this up here. What advice do you have? I really hope we spend a lot of time on this topic here. I hope, students that are watching this and say, yeah, we've had this here. Lives are lost. You've shared a story on that. This is a very, very serious topic. We could spend hours talking about this. But what advice, I don't even know how you're going to say it for the students to believe, but let's try.
But
what
let's
advice?
just try.
Yeah, let's just try.
We've talked a little
Let's
bit
be
about,
hopeful,
being grown and like being responsible. I think you have to take on a grown mindset. Like you have to just keep your eye on the prize and remember that the future that you want for yourself. And I know firsthand that is a lot easier said than done, especially like when you're in the heat of the moment or like you're at a party, you're with your friends, whatever it is. But getting wrapped up in this type of stuff, it can take all of that away from you. Any dreams you had, any type of future that you had in mind, like it can take all of it away. And I've seen that. I've seen someone's life literally got taken because of some of the choices that they made. And there are so many people that battle with addiction, and that started from one occurrence. And I think that's something to really put things into perspective also. Yeah. It only takes one time for it to lead down that type of road. But I mean, even if you have already kind of started down that road, it's also just important to remember to surround yourself with a good support system. You have to be willing to talk about it, be willing to get help and ask for help.
Thank you. My closing is simple. Just don't do drugs.
I knew you were going to say that. Just don't do it.
My closing is very simple. On a serious note, and I know I can't keep a straight face while I'm saying this here, but really, just don't do drugs. It is easier done than said. That's something somebody told me way back when, because we always say easier said than done, right? This is a situation where it's easier if you don't do it than say it.
Right.
It's easier not to drink than say you're not going to drink. It's easier not to smoke than say you're not going to smoke, right? Because that's taking a process. So that is kind of the the lesson from that little thing. Again, all right. Thank you all for joining us today. Once again, remember the value of a college degree is as unique as each individual's journey. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the evolving landscape of education and careers. Until then, stay curious. But once again, we are empowering minds.
One episode at a time.
One episode at a time. Don't drink beer, very fitting for the topic today, but live beer, balance, eat well, exercise, and rest. My dear students, lives can be lost. I'm just leaving it as that.
Yep.
Just don't
do it.
We'll see you all next time.
See you next time.